Hi there, Kay Newton here, and welcome to the Midlife Retreat. This is a place where you can relax, rejuvenate, and be inspired. So close the door to the outside world, put your feet up, and have a nice time for the next hour. I've got Sean with me today, and we're going to talk about breathing, but let's start the session with a couple of deep breaths, Sean. So let's breathe in. And out. And in. And out. We have to do that every week, and it's my favourite part of the week. Really puts me in the mood for the retreat. So welcome, Sean. I'm going to introduce you, and then we'll get straight into some questions. Not quite sure who's going to join us live today. I'm sure they'll have loads of questions if they do, so let's just get on with it. So Sean has been on a journey of self-discovery for the last 15 years, a journey which began in an ashram in India and which has had such a profound effect on his life. He stayed and lived and worked there for over 14 months. Sean has done numerous self-development, self-inquiry and meditation groups and was drawn to breath work in 2015 when he found Transformational Breath. The work is very much intertwined with intentions and the manifestations of those intentions. And since being introduced to transformational breathing, Sean says his life has changed beyond measure. He goes on to say, transformational breath is the most powerful tool I have come across, and it was right beneath our noses, just waiting to be discovered. It works on 3 levels: the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. It has many healing benefits, and the one I can attest to is the decimation of stress. So welcome, Sean. So pleased to have you here at last with us. And I gather in Mallorca, you've got some really, really hot weather at the minute.
Thank you, Kay. Yes, it's extremely hot. I've got this fan right in front of me. It's, it's what, midday? It feels like 40 degrees outside. And at this time of year, it doesn't get cooler at night either. It just stays wet the whole day.
Yeah.
Wet and
well,
sticky.
we have a wet day here in Zanzibar. I'm feeling the opposite. I don't have my fan on today because it's been raining all day. In fact, my toes feel a bit chilly. So yeah, different for me. From what it's normally like. Normally I'm the one with a fan on and looking rather pink and sweaty when I do these interviews. Sean, tell us a little bit about Sean before he went to the ashram.
Well, I'm a boarding school pupil. I've got boarding school syndrome, I've heard it being called. But I also lived I was a neighbor of yours. I used to live in Zambia, in Africa. I lived there. My parents were brought up in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. And as a Catholic, it was basically they were living under apartheid. So they couldn't get work and had to emigrate. So they went to Zambia. And my father and mother taught in Zambia for the best part of 20 years. And I guess when it got to about 12 years old, the education system was starting to, it wasn't very strong. A lot of teachers would go out there for a 2 or 3 year sabbatical and then leave. So their primary interest wasn't really in the interest of the pupil. So my parents, being teachers, obviously stressed the importance of education and sent me away to Northern Ireland. And that's where all my troubles started. Bloody boarding school. Anybody listening, do not send your children to boarding school.
It's really funny because my husband went to boarding school and he said exactly the same as you. When we had our 2 boys, he said, I don't want them to go to boarding school. And yet my oldest son, when he got to 16, made his own decision that he wanted to go to boarding school. And he happened to choose a really good school and absolutely loved his 2 years. And I think it does make a big difference when it's their decision. And also at 16, it makes a big difference. Vanessa's with
Vanessa's just
us.
written in. She's a
She's
boarding
just,
school survivor. Like, you know, I was. Someone sent me something yesterday about boarding school. George Monbiot was giving a brief talk on it, and basically, you know, I know you say your son decided to go. That's a whole different scenario. But kids are sent away at 7 or 8, and
yeah,
as far as Monbiot is concerned, he says that's child abuse.
yeah,
And he says it's a class thing. If working class parents sent their kids to boarding school, there would be uproar, but because the upper class have that privilege. And he says our country, basically Great Britain, is being run by boarding school survivors. And you know, certainly in my experience, it's you know, I certainly, to protect myself, I had to cut myself off from emotional secure, you know, just I had to cut my feelings off. I couldn't survive otherwise, you know. I think it's pretty much, I think Vanessa might agree, although being a girl is maybe slightly different. But yeah, it's really horrible. And my parents were thousands of miles away, and it was a Catholic school. It was halfway up a mountain in the back end of nowhere, and that was what made it really difficult. There was a boarding school, which was a Protestant school, in the same town as my grandmother and 3 of my mom's brothers. So it was 5 minutes walk, but my parents, and it was full of sporting activities. It was wonderful. But no, I had to go to the Catholic school. So
yeah. So what happened when you left school?
I became the boarding school, basically I was a very good kid. I did everything correctly and was the model pupil. And then I think at the end of boarding school, I just had enough of authority. I didn't trust them anymore. I didn't trust the church. I didn't trust the priests. I didn't trust people, basically. So it's just like I didn't trust what I was told and didn't believe what I was being told. So I kind of, I wouldn't say hardcore rebellion, but I certainly started to rebel. You know, I completed my A levels, but, you know, I wouldn't wear my tie correctly. I had long hair, and, you know, the collar was up when I could get away with it. Just little things. But then, yeah, after that, I guess the rebelliousness grew exponentially. But I never did time or anything like that.
And that was all still in Ireland, or did you come back to your parents in Zambia when all that was going on?
No, my parents moved back in 1987 because Zambia was very, very dangerous. We got robbed at gunpoint at 6 o'clock in the day, and it was just enough. It was enough. My mom got a severe shock. We had 6 black guys in the house with knives, like big bladed knives, and they were panicking. And thankfully, my father knew the culture quite well. He had been teaching for 20 years, so he knew how to calm them down and assure his safety and that of the family. But they moved back in 87, back to Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland was in the middle of war.
Yeah.
And actually it felt very, very safe to go back to a war zone compared to what Zambia was like. So it was a bit ironic. But no, I completed my last 2 years back in my hometown where my mom and dad moved back to, and did my A levels. Then went on to art college. Then went into a career in advertising. I worked for Saatchi & Saatchi in London as a copywriter when I was 30. So that was before India. That was my pre-India life, you know.
So what was the move from Saatchi & Saatchi to the ashram? What took you there?
What was
the catalyst there?
Well, it had basically been a good 15 years since I had been in Zambia. So since I'd kind of seen the outside world, I had this longing to see more of the world. But I felt I was really stuck in a career, and a career that I really enjoyed. I loved the creativity of it, even though I'm not a born creative. But I loved coming up with concepts for big ad campaigns. But I was also very much an anti-consumer. So I felt myself on the front line of consumerism and yet a complete hypocrite. So I was really struggling with what to do, but the high stress of advertising was starting to take its toll on me. And around 30, I just had enough. It was around just before September 11. And then once September 11 happened, the whole budget for advertising agencies went down, and I just thought, I got to get out of this. So I was interested in meditation. And then, of course, being interested in meditation, the first port of call for me was going to be India.
So when you went off to the ashram, and obviously you learned a lot about yourself because you ended up staying there for 14 months. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Speaking of rebelliousness, if it wasn't for my rebelliousness, I don't know if I would have staying at the ashram. Basically, it was the World Cup, 2002, and Ireland were doing extremely well in the World Cup, and we were missing our best player, Roy Keane. He was the captain of Manchester United, and he walked out on the Irish football team because the training facilities were a disgrace. And the Irish team then got together and played like a unit and played brilliantly, but they were beaten in the 5th round. So they nearly got to the quarterfinal and were beaten on penalties. And there was this 5-star hotel in India, in Pune, that was doing an offer where you could basically, for five or 6 euro, you could drink as much alcohol and eat as much food as you want during the World Cup. So I didn't care too much for the food, but took full advantage of the alcohol and ended up getting very drunk. I was the only one in the bar watching the game. And of course, we lost on penalties, and I found myself in the bathroom staring at a huge mirror in frustration at losing this possible, victory for Ireland. So as I was walking out of the bathroom, I turned and whacked the mirror with the heel of my foot. I was just frustrated, and I turned around, and there was this huge crack. The mirror must have been 12 foot by 12 foot. This huge crack along the mirror. So I thought, oh shit, what have I got myself into? The next thing, I had 20 Indians around me looking for basically 400 quid. And I was not going to pay. I was not going to give them 400 quid. So I spent basically the night in the jail because I refused to pay them the money. But I had an ashram card with me. And in the night, they wanted to take me back to my house, and for whatever reason. But I didn't want to show them where I lived because I had some stuff in my flat that maybe they wouldn't have been too happy to see. So I pretended that I was too drunk to know where I could live. So they came back to the ashram because it was the only connection that I had with India on me. So then I spent the whole day, the next day in the jail. They took all my money. They wouldn't give me any water because I wasn't going to drink their tap water. And that was the worst of it. Basically not with a really intense hangover and not being able to drink any water for the whole day. So anyway, I went to the court, I just wanted to get out of this whole situation. I went to the security manager. I says, get me out of here. I'll pay you what you want. He took me to a cash machine. I paid him 140 euros at the time. That was all I could get from the machine. He says, that'll do. Fantastic. He took me back to the hotel where I caused the damage. I was greeted warmly by all the Indian staff, and I was given 2 beers on the house for the rest of the World Cup, and my chair right in front of the TV screen for the rest of the games. Anyway, back to the story. I tried to get back into the ashram the next day, but they wouldn't let me in because of this incident with the police. So I had to meet with the security of the ashram then. And basically, I was expecting some finger wagging and being told that this is not the right behavior and to basically buck up. But I was ready to go. I had enough. I didn't really like the ashram. I thought everyone was just basically up their arse a little bit, and was ready to leave. But actually, the head of security of the ashram, once he found out that I was Irish, he just found it extremely hilarious. He wasn't telling me off at all. And he was just telling me that they didn't really have a very good relationship with the police. And the police wanted them closed down. So, you know, if people who are related to the ashram get into trouble with the police, it doesn't look good. And I thought to myself, oh, cool. They don't like the police don't like them. I don't like the police don't like me. And they said to me, maybe you want to do some groups here, some therapy work. And I just thought to myself, I just need to stay off the strong stuff. I thought I had a great childhood in Africa, didn't even think about my boarding school experience. But a few days later, it began to sink in, and I thought, to hell with it, I'm gonna do a bit of therapy. And once I did my first group, that was the start. I realized there was a lot of conditions and patterns, behavioral patterns and belief systems that I wasn't aware of until then. So it was like I was living a masked life. I was living in an illusion, you know. So that was the beginning of the end for me, actually, from that moment.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. It's a wonderful story. And very open and honest, and I loved the way you talk about it as well. It made me smile. It was, you know, I can imagine you telling that to a wider audience on a large stage. It would be a wonderful story. So
well, the irony of it, you know, if I hadn't got into trouble, I don't know if I would have stayed there. But you know, Osho was the master. I mean, he's not in his body anymore. But of all the rebels that I know, and I followed a few in my years, from Muhammad Ali to Nelson Mandela. But for me, Osho is the #1 rebel, and I really felt a kinship with him. And for me, he pretty much saved my life, actually.
Wonderful. So you had 14 months in total in the ashram and came out a changed person, a changed man. So how did you get to Mallorca? And you have a passion for golf as well, I seem to remember. Where does all that fit into the puzzle?
Well, the golf started in Zambia. So that was, I played with my dad a lot, and I got pretty good. I won a couple of championships there, had ideas to become a player. And so after my stint with India, basically I was out of the advertising game. I didn't really want to go into it again. And then I had to find a new career. And I was basically in a gap for 5 or 6 years. I was hitting 36. I'm totally lost. didn't know what to do with my life, and always believed that if I'm going to dedicate so much of my time to work, if I'm going to dedicate so much of my life in work, then it needs to be something that I enjoy. So golf was my next. And I was about 36, decided to study to become a golf teacher, and have been doing that pretty much ever since. It's been a real struggle, not as glorious a career move as it sounds from the outside. Just really not really knowing what I'm doing, not knowing much about the golf swing, charging people 30, 40 euros an hour and not really being able to help their game. But it's pretty much like that across the board in golf. So I was following where the work would take me, and the work took me to England. So I was living in England, pretty miserable, isolated, not really connecting with the people that I had connected with in India, who were kind of interested on a more spiritual journey rather than the, I don't know, facade of the life that we tend to live. So yeah, anyway, I was basically working in England, and then there's a group that I do, a workshop that I do pretty much every year, either as a staff, usually as a staffer, and it's called Path of Love. And Path of Love is basically, for me, the best therapy group you can do on this planet. So I was going there to staff to refuel. It gets me back in touch with my heart when I go there. And I met the love of my life when I was staffing there. And within a year, we had both decided that we would move to Mallorca together. She lived in Amsterdam. I lived in Essex. And she was ready to leave Amsterdam. She'd been 10 years there already. And I just wanted to get out of England. So we moved here. We've been here 2 years.
And your intention then was to really teach golf in Mallorca, but is that where you found your transformational breathing?
Yeah, just before I left, I did a workshop in Essex, actually with a breath worker who had come to participate on the Path of Love. You know, I said I did it every year. Well, basically, I met this guy in Cologne doing it, and he invited me to do a workshop in Essex. Did the workshop, and actually, it was from that time that Mallorca started to come into the picture, because in our breath work, we talk a lot about intentions, and we call it miracle consciousness. Now, I'm not very esoteric. I'm not really into this kind of airy-fairy stuff. But yeah, the breath work has really opened my mind up to connecting to having a dialogue with the energy field, with the universal energy, and asking for help. Asking for help and really trusting that if you're clear on what you want, the universe will provide. And that's what the breath has given me. And it was from that workshop on that day on that my life just seemed to open up for me and create this path that I'm now living in Mallorca. So I ended up doing some trainings back and forth. Started my trainings in England, then moved here, went back and forth to trainings actually the trainings were in Northern Ireland, so it was good for me to visit my parents and also do the trainings. So at the minute I'm coaching golf, and I'm a breath worker. I'm giving workshops, I'm giving one-to-one sessions. I'm the organizer of Transformational Breath Spain. We just had 2 weeks of training. We had eight 8 participants on both trainings. So these are people that now want to learn to breathe themselves and to become facilitators in it. So I'm the first breath worker in Mallorca, but by this time next year, there's going to be 4 breath workers in Mallorca. It's the new yoga. It really is. People are so intrigued by this work. They're curious. There's not this taboo that a lot of people have around spirituality. It's like breath. It's like we all breathe. It's easy to just jump in, and it gives people that taste of, I guess, what a meditative state is like, afterwards, and then they get even more curious.
I think it was a little bit like that for me. I wanted something to do on the 21st of June because it was, it was a special day. It was the equinox, but it was also the celebration of my father's birthday. He died 3 years ago, and I was looking for something to do, and I was given the information about your course from a girlfriend of mine, and I literally booked it without knowing anything about it. And came away from that session absolutely blown away. It was it was life-changing as you describe it. And so much so that I had to come and see you again before I left for Zanzibar. And I think breathing with intention, or intentional breathing, or it's just an absolutely fascinating thing. I love it. And I need you to explain it in a bit more detail to our guests and to the people who are going to be listening to the repeat.
Sure. I mean, basically it works on 3 levels. The physical level, the emotional and the mental level, and the spiritual level. So in one breath session, you cover those 3 areas. And every breather. Now, to elaborate a little bit on what that means, the physical level is basically our respiratory pattern, which is, for most of us, at 30% of its full capacity. Yeah, so we're using 30% of our lungs capacity, and it's not really a lot. Our whole breathing system has basically been shut down since childhood. I mean, it's got to be shut down. I held a baby last week, and the way that baby was breathing was it was breathing perfectly. So what happens on the physical level? Basically, the breath. We use the breath to control emotions, to control feelings, to control trauma, shock. The breath is always that's our survival mechanism. So the first stage is to open up this breathing. Yeah, that's the physical level. And then, of course, once you do that, you're opening up all the stuffed emotions, all the blocked energy. It's been there for years. So now the emotions and the mental stuff comes up. So you've got your physical, your mental, and emotional. And then once you clear the mental, once you clear that emotional, it's like wiping the surface of dust. Your mind is clean. When your mind is clean, your mind is quiet. When your mind is quiet, you have presence. When you have presence, you're in touch with spirit. It's very simple.
And that's the other thing. The simplicity about it is just it's overwhelming. It's stunning. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, I mean the breath. There's a few different forms of breath work, and basically they all are similar in the sense that they use conscious. They call it conscious connected breath. So most of them have the mouth open. Yeah. And there's no gaps between the exhale and the inhale. So it's connected, circular breath. And that's basically that's across the board pretty much. But with transformational breath, we also use a little bit of acupressure on the meridian lines of the body, so we can go really right into the blocked areas and help release the blocks faster. We also use sound healing, yeah, and we have the 3 basics that we're always looking for. So we're looking for the connected breath, the no gaps, the large inhale of air, and the soft, relaxed exhale. So through a breath session, those are the 3 basics that I'm always looking for. And it's those 3 basics, along with the acupressure and the sound healing, that makes transformational breath unique. As well, of course, as its connection with intentions and this universal dialogue that we have.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's brilliant. I don't think we've got anybody in line at the minute. I think Vanessa's disappeared. Maybe she's had to go off to something else. I don't know if anybody's got any questions. If anybody's picking up the recording and they do have questions, if they want to put them in the chat here, that's fine. I'll always pass them on to Sean. Sean, if you want to just put into the chat where people can connect with you. So your website, which I know is new, so please put your new link in there. And Facebook's good as well. I think a lot of people connect on there. So please put those into the chat. And then if anybody wants to get in touch with you and find out where your next courses are, then, you know, they can do that direct, which will be fabulous.
Okay. So I've got that's my website and now
fabulous.
My Facebook page.
So if anybody wants any more details, wants any more explanations, wants to find out where the next workshops are and courses, it's all there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's, you know, the benefits. Okay, it's like, for me, stress, like moving to this island, I had no money, no work, no language. I just think, what am I doing here? This is crazy. So every morning I got out of bed, it was like I had a choice of 2 things. Do I smoke a joint or do I do some breathing? You know, and every time I did the breath, there was no stress, there was no anxiety. It was gone. So it wasn't really much of a choice. Every morning I went for the breathing, and that's why I'm still here. It really is incredible for anxiety. Headaches, sleeping problems, lower back pain, self-esteem. I mean, people have been healed from other illnesses, let's say terminally ill illnesses. We can't claim to do those things, but certainly the founder of this work had throat cancer and she didn't go near a doctor. She just healed herself through her breath. So, I mean, if any of you want to know, can it help this or can it help that? Please just ask me, but it's really across the board. Unlimited.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing has been the self-esteem, the self-worth, or the synchronicity. You're putting out my intentions into the universe, and lo and behold, when it goes out there with real meaning, it comes back slap straight in your face. So you've got to be very careful how you ask and make sure you
be very careful, you know, because like I was sitting on a driving range in Essex on a really nice day, and I thought, I just had a moment of reflection, and I said, I'm not happy with my life. This is not what I asked for. And then it dawned on me, it's like, yes, you did. You wanted to become a golf coach. Here you are. And it's like, shit, I didn't ask what kind of golf. I wasn't specific enough. So then it was like, right, I want to be a golf coach in a nice climate with wealthy people who won't moan about how much you're charging them. Actually, I don't even want to work at a golf club. I want to do golf holidays. And this, you know, and this is what's happening. So it's really
I think it's very, very important. Yeah.
It's that clarity. But I'm just going just to kind of explain what really happens in this breathing. Like there's a magic. There's really a magic. And yes, the intentions is all related in that. But during the actual session, like why do we come out feeling so much lighter? You know, with so much lighter. Well, basically, it's something called entrainment. And entrainment is a physical law. And if you know, if anybody knows of Bruce Lipton, one of the biggest speakers on neuroscience, he will also be talking about entrainment and how everything seeks harmony. From the energy of each atom in the field, they're seeking harmony. Yeah, this is quantum physics. So even the cells in our body are all seeking harmony. Yeah. So if basically I'm going into a breathing session, and I'm feeling maybe some negative states like irritation, impatience. Maybe there's some fear like just stuff, dark stuff, negative stuff. Well, what happens is through the entrainment, the higher vibration will always lift the lower vibration. It's a bit like opening a door to a dark room. The light will always come into the room. So the negative energies always lift it up to the positive. This is the natural law of entrainment. This is the natural law of the cell seeking a harmony. So on that cellular level, your whole energy field rises. And then we're not even talking about the organs, blood flow, blood circulation. So it's really from the very core, fundamental level that this entrainment, this magic happens.
I think that's a lovely word for it, and not the entrainment word. I think the magic is a beautiful word to describe it. Yeah. And talking of beauty, you live in the most beautiful place as well. Describe a little bit about your lovely home where you are now in Mallorca.
I'm living on a very large finca in the countryside near Sineo. And actually what it is, my girlfriend and her best friend basically came to Mallorca with the intention of setting up a natural product furniture shop. And they just checked in with themselves basically and thought, my girlfriend basically grew up in communities. Her parents were Osho sannyasis. So she always had this pull to live in a community again. And they after check-in, they thought, well, look, we've moved to Mallorca. We haven't really started our new project yet. So if we're going to start something, let's start something that we really, really want to do. And they jumped in. They jumped in basically with very, very little money. They borrowed maybe 10 grand each from their grandmothers. And that was it. Maybe another 10 grand from a sponsor. So with 30 grand in their pockets, they basically have created an amazing place. The house itself is, again, I'll use the word magical, but they've basically created a place based around 4 pillars: self-development, community, sustainability, and low impact. So that's what kind of holds this community together that we have. As I mentioned, I did 2 breath trainings. They were held at Dima. We have a very long bodega underneath the house, which we use as our meditation room. And that's where groups come. We just had 24 people living in the house for 10 days doing a massage training last week. Next week, we're going to do an Osho No Mind meditation for 7 days. So it's a lively house. There's lots going on. It's quiet outside, but there's lots going on in the house and often inside. And pretty much you're challenged every day. But things are always moving. The energy's always moving, and it's never boring. And actually, you can forget about comfort zones. It just doesn't happen. So, I mean, it definitely has its downsides, but I don't think I've ever felt as alive in my life as I do now. I'm 45. And my life is just more exciting than it's ever been. So
it's
fantastic.
Definitely not boarding school where we started this conversation.
No, definitely not. But if it wasn't for the boarding school, I don't think I would have taken these, odd paths.
Yeah.
Because I'm really outside the box, my life. I look at some of my older friends. They're still back in their home village in Ireland, and even some of my brothers and sisters doing the 9 to 5, which is fine, but it's just not me. And I really think I'm grateful for the boarding school experience, because if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have seeked out meditation and gone to the ashram in India and made all these life decisions that have brought me here.
And ended up where you are in Mallorca now. Do you have a link to the house that you can share with people as well, in case they want to stay with you?
Yes, I do.
Because I know you have some beautiful rooms when they're not occupied.
Yes. And my girlfriend did the website. It's a terrific website.
Well, I'll have a look. I'll go and have another look. Sean, thank you so much for being with us. We've got no one else to ask questions, but I'm sure they'll come your way. They know where to find you now. Breath work on Mallorca as well.
I'm going to send a link to Vanessa also about boarding school. Someone sent me something.
Still there. It's all very inspirational. It is, Vanessa. I agree. Sean's created what I call my goose pimple scenario. He always causes me to have goose pimples. It's been really great to have him on the conversation this morning. I've got, Sean, some questions I ask all my guests when they come. So they're just one-word answers from you, and they're to do with going on a retreat and a holiday. So are you ready?
Yes.
So what's the one thing that stresses you out about going on holiday?
Oh, I think the traveling. I'm not a good traveler. Really not a good traveler. I think in our experience of Zambia, I mean, I was in a big family, and trying to get 6 kids on a plane from my mom and dad must have been extremely stressful. But just something really gets, I'm going to miss the plane, or there's going to be a traffic jam. I'm just the worst traveler. So yeah, that's my answer.
So traveling. And what's the one thing you always take on holiday?
My yoga mat.
Perfect. And what's the one thing you wish you'd left behind?
Clothes. Always. I mean, I never use even a third of the clothes that I take. I'm just like, why do I always pack my suitcase? It's just not necessary.
Now, this will be an interesting question for you. What's the one thing you need to ditch right now, either mentally or physically?
Oh, I think generally it's just toxins. I've got to just start treating my body as I'm getting older better and better. And I am doing that. But, I do like a drink now and again. And the Irish, you can take the boy out of Ireland, but you can't take the Irish out of the boy. But I definitely think just going easier on the toxins is something that I could definitely do with.
And another one is, what's the one thing you love to do, which is being sensibly selfish? Sensibly selfish means putting yourself first.
Golf.
Perfect. And you can answer this a bit longer. What's the worst advice you were ever given? And I'm going to say it midlife. You're not exactly right in midlife, but what's the worst advice you've ever been given about life?
I was thinking about that the other day, because I remember after India, I came back and stayed with my parents for a little while and got back into a small advertising firm in Belfast because it was easy. I'd been at Saatchi's, I'd been in London, so it was quite easy to get a job in a tin pot agency in Northern Ireland. But I was living with my parents, I was using my mom's car, and it was this collective, it just started to get fearful of the future again, and it was like looking to take out a year's lease of a rental flat. You know, I was about to move into Belfast for a year. I mean, this is crazy. I wasn't really thinking it through. So it wasn't really anybody giving me any advice, but certainly my parents weren't against it. My mum was secretly very, very happy to see her now 36, 37-year-old son settling down into a 9-to-5, getting a job, you know. But looking back, that would have been the one thing that would have destroyed me. So it was the advice that I was giving myself, but I felt it was coming unconsciously from the outside.
Yeah.
But I think I'm so glad
I think you said it earlier. There's some people just can't do that 9-to-5. It's just not in their blood.
No. And you know, it's really not necessary. We don't. Computers are around to make our lives less stressful, right? To give us more time. And actually, that's not what's happening. We're working longer hours. We're working more than ever. So I think less and less people are going to be working 9-to-5s. I know so many friends who are doing their own thing. And it takes a little bit of guts at the start, but if you've got a passion, there's no question that that's what you've got to do, is it?
And I think if you just need that little bit of help, then come to a breathing transformational course and you'd find a workshop.
You know, the most amazing thing happened. The most amazing thing happened 3 weeks ago. We had a guy in to do a demo. We invited a guest in to do a demo breath session with him. So my senior trainer was doing a breath session for this Italian friend of mine. And this guy's been in a gap for 5-6 years. He's about 50, you know. One of these guys that can't do a 9-to-5 but doesn't really know what to do with his life. So he was in the breath session and he's thinking of the intention is, what do you want for this breath session? And he says, I want to have clarity for where to take my life and to do with work. You know, I need some clarification to knuckle down and you know, have a new lease of life in this work that I don't know yet what it is that I want to do. At the end of the breath session, he revealed to the class, now I know what I want to do. It's breath work. So now he's training to be a breathwork facilitator.
Fantastic. Sean, it's been wonderful to have you on the call. We're coming up to nearly 50 minutes now. I'm going to end the broadcast, which means I have to press this little red button here at the bottom of the screen. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow me to take you into the back office to say goodbye to you. So I'm going to say goodbye to you now, and thank you so much for being with us. And I'll see you very, very shortly when I come over to Mallorca. Take care. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, no problem. And thank you, Vanessa, and thank you to all.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa.
All of you. Okay.
I'll send you a link now, Vanessa.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.